What's going on, guys? Saga Plays here, coming back at you with the last MTG Innistrad Crimson Vow spoiler in terms of mythic and rares. But overall, all of the spoilers have been released for commons, uncommons, rares, mythics. All of them have already been released. So now, pretty much price fluctuations will happen, but there will be no more new cards spoiled for the remainder of the year. And then next cards that will be spoiled of the play are the Kamigami set coming out next year in early next year. Yeah. So I already pulled up all the cards that have been spoiled all last week slash any cards that I missed last week that came out after I posted a video. So Volador and Bloodcaster. I don't remember if I actually I already did her. I remember now by reading her, but pretty much all there aren't that many. They're pretty much just white and blue because since I did those earlier, these cards weren't released yet, so I'll just be doing those today. So this video will be fairly short because it's 6 cards and there should be a price for all of them. So we'll be able to figure out where they're at in terms of like price and if people will use them because I go based off the price. But yeah, this is mythicspoiler.com where I look at all my MTG spoilers, but let's get right into it with Faithbound Judge is a 1 white 4/4 creature spirit soldier with Defender, Flying, Vigilance. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Faithbound Judge has 2 or more Fear Judgment counters on it, put a Judgment counter on it. Two, 2 or fewer Judgment counters, put a Judgment counter on it. And then, as long as Faithbound Judge has 3 or more Judgment counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. And then it has a disturb cost of 5 white, and it turns into Sinner's Judgment, enchantment, or a curse. Enchant player. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a judgment counter on Sinner's Judgment. Then, if there are 3 or more judgment counters on it, enchanted player loses the game. If Sinner's Judgment would be put into exile, into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Alright, so right off the bat, I can tell you, you would want this on Sinner's Judgment. It is super powerful because you're pretty much putting a judgment counter. Pretty much the second this goes on, at your next upkeep, your opponent now has a 3 turn time limit. Otherwise, they will lose because you need 3 or more judgment counters, and there are ways to proliferate that type of thing. Double your counters that go on a permanent. All those ways are totally usable in order to run the clock up. But if you're not running any of those and just going and the Sinner's Judgment is just getting judgment counters off of itself, then your opponent is pretty much on a 3 turn time limit after during the next upkeep after you've cast Faithbound Judge for its disturb cost. But like that is a super good backside, and Faithbound Judge on the front side isn't that bad at all either. It sucks like if Faithbound Judge has 2 or fewer judgment counters, pretty much put a judgment counter on it, but you would need to like figure out a way to get a third one on it because you would have to proliferate or double a permanent's counter somehow in order for him to have 3 or more. Excuse me, sorry, but because after 2 counters are on him, he won't be able to put a third one on himself. So you're gonna have to figure out a way in order for him to have 3 in order to attack as though he didn't have defender, and then flying and vigilance super useful at either way. So let's see his price. Faith Bound Judge. And then let me just copy $8 for its lowest, I'm guessing. So 1335 at for normal, and then 1927 for extended. So either he's pretty much getting a get played because you're getting a 4/4 defender flying vigilance creature for 3 CMC, and then for 7, which would be late game, you would have it flip over for your opponent's 3 turn time limit during the next upkeep after you've cast it. So I mean, really good card. I'd use it. Uh, I mean, I'd probably just buy it straight, not try and pull out a pack. But pulling cards from packs are fun. So who knows? But I would definitely run it. I'm gonna add it to my mutate deck in on Arena. But yeah, Faithbound Judge, solid card. Next one, Hopeful Initiate for white. 1 white mana, creature human warlock, 1/2 with training, and 2 white, remove 2 +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. So pretty much right off the bat, this creature is you'd want them in your deck for artifact and enchantment removal, and I mean even if you don't have ways to get +1/+1 counters on him, like outs other than him getting +1/+1 counters via training, he's still super useful. I mean, 1 CMC, and then you pretty much are gonna need 3 mana in order and at least 2 +1/+1 counters with on him in order to trigger his ability. So it's like play your moments, that type of card, or use him as a chump blocker if you have to. So I'm not sure where he would land, but like in terms of early game, you're trying to get rid of your opponent's very cheap enchantments that could become a problem later on, then yeah, you would probably want to run him, but not too sure where he would fall. But all right, so 345, 347. So I mean, he won't be super played as much because he was probably going to be your like turn 1 or 2 creature, and then like after that he's kind of useless because he can die super easily. You would use him as a jump blocker, or if you're able to pull him off, trigger him at once, and then at that after that, your opponent would get rid of him if they haven't already. So he'll be get removed early in the game. So you may not be able to trigger him, but people may run 1 or 2 copies of him. So I won't deny that. Next one is Catilda Dawnheart Martyr for 1 white legendary creature spirit warlock. Power toughness are stars, so it has flying lifelink protection from vampires. Catilda Dawnheart Martyrs power and toughness are each equal to the number of permanents you control that are spirits and slash or enchantments. Disturb 3 white, and it becomes Catilda's Rising Dawn, legendary enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires, and it gets +X+X, where X is the number of permanents you control that are spirits and slash or enchantments. If Catilda's Rising Dawn would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So right off the bat, you probably won't run her as your commander, but you'd probably run her as like support, especially since like if you're because this is like centered around spirit tribal, so you would have to be add her, have her in part of that, because if she's your only card on the battlefield with no other enchantments or spirits, she is pretty much a 1/1. But you'd probably have her on a flipped over. Sorry, you probably cast her for disturb costs more so, mainly because it becomes an aura enchantment which buffs up one of your creatures, and it gives her all her abilities which is nice because they're getting plus X, so they're buffed up, and then flying lifelink, and then protection from pro vampires, which is solid. And then I like how it's spirits and or enchantments with the plus X or the star slash star, mainly because like it it really depends on like your the board state on whether or not like if you're heavy enchantments you would run her, or if you're able to create multiple spirits, or if you have Mask with Nexus, which turns all creatures into all creature types, then it pretty much will become like super useful, super powerful if you have multiple creatures on the battlefield that are spirits, or if you're able to have multiple enchantments. So I don't know where she would stack in terms of playability wise, but I'm I'm probably guessing that she will not be like one of your key cards in your deck. She'll probably be a support piece. But let's see where she is. Oop, start typing without. Catilda Dawnheart Martyr. So 175. Yeah, she's pretty low, mainly because like you would need to be 354 as market price, but either way, she would be spirit tribal or enchantment focus in an enchantment focused deck. So I mean she's very it's a deck situational type card. And then like even then she'll be like a support if for her other side in terms of buffing up your creatures, that type of thing. So I'm not too sure where where it would lie with her. So that's all I can say in terms of where how she looks in terms of price and ability wise. Next, Winged Portent for one blue instant, cleave 4 green blue, draw a card for each creature with for its normal cost, not cleave. Draw a card for each creature with flying you control, but casting it for its cleave cost, draw a card for each creature you control. So, I mean, fairly solid card. Super useful if you have a giant board state with a bunch of creatures and you have enough mana, mainly because this spell pro- you would probably run it with if you're like gonna be playing this spell late game in order to draw a bunch of cards. Its colors are color identity is green and blue because of the cleave cost, requiring 1 green mana, and then like blue, and then for colorless. But yeah, color identity is green blue, and then so you know you're gonna be able to ramp because Simic is very useful ramp, very powerful creatures. So I mean, if you have a giant creature board state and you have at least 6 mana, then you're going to want to cast this for your cleave cost in order to draw however many creatures that is. Otherwise, like if you only have flying creatures, then you're going to be casting it for 3 CMC instead. But I mean, like if you have a bunch of flying creatures, or you're able to give all your creatures flying, that type of thing, then you would probably cast cast it for 3 CMC because it is cheaper, and you're still getting those that same amount of cards just for a different cost. So I mean, it may be useful. It's just depending on like board state, and if you're not casting it for the cleave, then it just depends on your how many flyers you have. So I'm not too sure where it would land, but if your deck heavily focuses on flyers, then you would run it. If not, then it would be like, and you try to cast it only for its cleave cost, then you're gonna be waiting a while. So I mean, 273 for normal, and then no market price for extended. So I mean, like you won't be running multiple copies. You'll probably be running like what 1 or 2 copies of them. So I won't. Not surprised because the cleave spells. It's like very situational. Like when do you cast it and what do you cast it for? Because I mean, you get a bigger benefit when casting the spell for its cleave cost instead of its normal cost. But Sorry, but it's just very dependent on like how much the leaf cost is in terms of what benefit you're getting. Because dig up, like I said, I would totally run that card, even if I have to wait in order to use it for its cleave cost. It is still super useful because it is another form of tutoring that you can make use of, even if uh, even if you have to wait. Because if you're waiting, then you could tutor out for your one of your key cards that you need, or one of your stronger creatures that you can cast upon at your next turn, or cast the same turn. It's just up to you as to whether or not. But I understand why this card there won't be many copies run in a deck because it is very situational in terms of if your deck is running flyers or not, or like if you have enough mana to cast it for its cleave cost. But next card is Jacob Hawken Inspector. One blue, legendary creature, human advisor, 0/2. And then ability with tap, draw a card. Sorry. Tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may pay 4 blue if you do transforms Jacob Hawken Inspector, and he becomes Hawkins Insight, legendary enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. Once, once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a spell from among the cards exiled this way with this permanent without paying its mana cost. Alright, so right off the bat, I can tell you, you are gonna definitely want to have him flip over, but you would probably want to cast him late game because even though he is a super cheap creature, you need to pay 6 mana in order to transform him after you tap him. So, and he is a 0/2, so he can die fairly quickly, easily, by a lot of means. So, I mean, you're gonna want to cast him and then try and give him haste. So, pretty much, you would need 8 mana, and if you're able to give him haste, I'm pretty much. So, here's what I'm thinking. When you cast him, you're probably gonna want to try and have at minimum 8 mana on the board, two for his main cost to cast him, and then 6 in order to transform him. And then, but before you transform him, give him haste somehow so you can tap him. And then you draw a card, exile a card from your hand face down, and then pay the 6 in order to transform him because at that point, you're able to make use of his other side, which is probably where you would want him for the most part, because legendary enchantment, you can cast spells or play lands from that are exiled with Hawkins Insight or Jacob Hawken without paying their mana cost. That is super useful by any means. Really useful to play your super expensive spells. If your super expensive spells get exiled, you can cast them without paying their mana cost. So that is very useful by any means. Casting a very expensive spell for free, that is useful no matter what. And then Jacob Hawken Inspector. Uh, yep, that's his showcase. But I don't think, yeah, it's not flippable. But yeah, so I mean, normal art isn't here, but just looking at the showcase and the Jonathan Harker version, 362 for Jonathan Harker, and then 2531, you would be running him no matter what. Probably a full playset in standard, Pioneer, Modern, those formats, or probably in have him as your commander in Commander or Brawl, I believe. That's Brawl is you pretty much have a commander from the current set. Your deck is centered around the current uh, uh, standard, I believe so. I mean, you would totally try and make use of him in terms of his ability to flip over or exile cards in order to make use of them later on. So, yeah. But I mean, like, price may fluctuate mainly because, like, he's a 0/2. He can die super easily to a shock, lightning bolt from your red spells. Even in green, a creature combats a creature you control. Your opponent's creature attacks one of your creatures your opponents control. They can get rid of it that way. So I mean, a whole bunch of slew of methods. So you want to cast them at the most opportune time in order to make full use of them. So because I would probably try and cast him for two, and then give him haste somehow. And this is me talking in a commander game. And then once he has haste, tap him, and then pay six in order to flip him over. And then I got full use of him after that as a legendary enchantment. Even though there are ways to destroy enchantments in green, black, and white, and blue, I guess. I'm not too sure about red. I've rarely ever seen a red enchantment removal, but he is super useful. And then last card is Hullbreaker Horror. 5 blue creature Kraken Horror. Flash. This spell can't be countered. And whenever you cast a spell, choose up to one. Return target spell you don't control to its owner's hand. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. And power 7, toughness 8. So I mean, this card, late game, you would try and make use of them like whenever you can, mainly because like even though it's 7 mana in total, 7 mana flash, so you can cast them at instant speed, and then it can't be countered, which is nice. And then just by casting, and then whenever you cast a spell, you're able to make use of one of the other abilities, which is return non-land permanent to its owner's hand. So you could return one of your permanents that you want. Whenever you cast an instant, you can return a permanent that you control so it doesn't die or anything to one of your opponent's effects, or return target spell to its owner's hand. Like if your opponent is casting literally one spell for that turn and you already have them out, cast an instant and then you cancel out their spell. So they pretty much used up all their mana for that turn, and then they don't have anything to protect themselves, any mana to use when it's your next turn. So he'll be useful, obviously late game for sure, but he'll be useful possibly during 347 and then 823 for extender art. I mean, yeah, 347 super expensive in blue, so he won't be run as much. You probably run like one or two copies, not a full playset, mainly because of the cost it takes, and then like you're pretty much like gonna have to figure out when to cast a spell because you're not getting anything like when he enters the battlefield or when you cast him for because you have to cast another spell in order to make use of his one of his two effects. So you pretty much gotta like plan properly in order to make use of him. Because even though he can't be countered, he can still be sorry, he can still be removed by some way. So I'm not surprised there. But that'll be our last card for Innistrad Crimson Vow in terms of rares and mythics. So let's see where the most expensive Innistrad Crimson Vow card is at. So it's Count Dracula, which is the Sorin the Mirthless special art at 68.85 box topper, and then a showcase Sorin for $50. So I mean, pretty much a $20 price jump between the two because these are our top two cards. So not surprising there. I mean, the additional 20 is mainly because of the art. That's just it. And yeah, for some of these, like it's the art and then sometimes the ability because Soaring the Mirthless Borderless is right there. And then Soaring the Mirthless is $21 even. So, I mean, people will be playing with him, but the cost is mainly because of the different art style and the borderless treatment, that type of thing. So, not surprising there, but that'll be it for all my spoilers this week. And tomorrow, Friday, I'll be posting a normal MTG Arena video or probably a Switch video. Not too sure yet, but it'll most likely be MTG Arena. So, but that'll do it. And have a nice day, guys. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe. Bye.